When a large moving, fast moving object starts moving really quickly, there's this thing that happens behind it, right? This area of low pressure starts filling up behind a fast moving object. And when that happens, if you are close to that object, you're able to move faster with less effort. This is drafting, right? And this is being inside that slipstream, and something's moving fast. And if it's moving fast, the closer you are to that thing, the less effort you need to put in to take advantage of it. This analogy will work for the whole morning, so stick with it. This is an important attribute of how things move, and it's pervasive in every market. It doesn't matter what your business is, but when there is a change in a market, the closer you can be to that change to get in the slipstream of that change, the less effort you have to do in order to take advantage of it. When you are fighting the winds by yourself and you're trying to do everything by yourself, it is so exhausting. It's hard and it's slow and it's wrought with trouble. But if you can attach yourself to momentum that's generated by a community or a total market shift, you're able to enjoy the benefits of that with less effort. And that's such a powerful mechanism for growth. And it's what we're going to be able to explore today. I want to help arm you with success using two binary techniques that work together, these two halves of the same coin, about betting on the future and then learning how to bet on yourself. And the more you can understand about what's going to happen in the future, the better you can then place bets on yourself. Many of us, if you don't have time to research what's changing, you simply just go with the flow, right? And here's something really interesting about slipstreams. Everyone in our industry is going to get some benefit of the change. I believe that. Everyone has an opportunity to get some benefit of the change. But some of you are late adopters. And you say, I'll wait and see. Some of you are, I'll wait and see. Some of your colleagues are, I'll wait and see. And the further away you are from the change, the less the effect is on you in being in that drafting mode. But some of you are early adopters. Most of you in this room are actually early adopters. And early adopters have the opportunity to take advantage of that. And so we're going to examine a couple of years of research, and the information that we're going to go over. I want to give credit to my brother Peter, and co-founder of a couple of businesses that we've started. He's just so good at research. And so we're going to give you many, many, many hundreds of hours of research so you don't have to do it. And it's going to help paint a picture of a predictive future that you could probably place some serious bets on. And if you know what's going to happen, then you got to figure out where you're going to place those bets on yourself. And I'm going to start to tell this story. We got to go a little bit backwards. You got to learn a little bit about me. And it starts 25 years ago. And this, just like Steve Martin was talking yesterday, it's been 25 years. And this is where I was 25 years ago. And my family blessed me with putting up enough money together to get me, who knows what this camera is? VX150. No, not quite. Close. PD150? PD150. So much better than the VX1000, the VX100. Come on. So much better. And the PD150 was amazing, but it wasn't amazing by itself. It had some really cool things. It was new, but it came out in an ecosystem. And many of you know where that ecosystem starts. This is 24 years ago, where you can see the beginning of my career. And I just have to say how thankful I am. Like, part of who I am is thanks to this technology. And I know many of you in the room are like, yep, that sounds familiar. Part of who you are is actually based on this product we call Final Cut. It's part of me. You know, you can see tucked under my knee. Like, of course, I don't even remember this photo being taken or who took it, but there is that my little G4. This is my college at Southern Illinois University. And this is where we started building. And then I got so excited about this technology with the FireWire, right? FireWire is hidden in here. And we heard Steve Jobs talk about FireWire. You heard that he said that word when they showed the clip yesterday. He snuck it in there. because people were like, what's that? What's IEEE 1394? Who knows what that is, right? Like, and that started to change everything. And so then I got a job at PBS. And this is me at PBS where I started to get really excited about post-production. This is me in front of my Grass Valley 200-2 Emmy switcher, which at the time I could play like a Steinway. And this was just an awesome opportunity. And by coupling and betting on the future of Firewire, Final Cut, Apple, and DV Cam and the PD150, I was able to leapfrog not just people in the collegiate world, I leapfrogged people in media and entertainment. And by the time I was 21, I had won 4 Emmys with the technology that I was leveraging, because I, like you, knew how to tell a story, but I told it better because I had better bets on new technology. When people were still at the time dealing with Betamax, which was limited in a lot of ways. They were dealing with linear tape and using an RM450, if you know what that is, to put together a story. And we were breaking all these rules with this new technology. We ended up quitting school because we realized school was so far behind what we were doing. We just left. And my college friends and I started a company called Plaster City. And we started it in 2003. And we started it out of the garage of the director Christopher Coppola. And we moved up to the mirror door. Remember the mirror door G4? Final Cut started improving, and this was the 6th Kona card ever made. The drivers came on a CD that was handwritten. It might have been Grant Petty, because at the time he worked for John App, I believe. And so this was a very early stage of being able to do uncompressed capture using a Mac. And this was very early. And that earliness started to be really exciting because people started to be like, I'm pointing that way. We started to find filmmakers in Los Angeles that said, this is where we're going to go, and I want to get into that. We started building systems that allowed us to build a business around an Apple-centric future, which in 2003 was a crazy idea. And it started to work. We started to get funding, and we started to go really big and say, okay, what if we could use SANs? And we could build these major SANs, and Apple had built all this X-ray and X-serve technology and X-SAN technology. We also used a technology made by the company Huge, which was eventually bought by Ciprico, and we started building that stuff. In fact, on the right, the picture there, that was a 24 terabyte SAN, my first SAN, built by Steve Barris, who's now at HBO. 24 terabytes was about $130,000. Now, while that sounds like a lot, you see on the right there's VTRs. You see the little jog shuttle wheels poking out? Those were $100,000 a piece. And what we did is we built a facility that had 3 VTRs that were 100 grand a piece. And we had 1 SAN, and at that time, using DVC Pro 100 megabits, we were able to have 10 HD edit sessions on a $100,000 SAN, where our competitors needed 20 VTRs to have 10 HD edit sessions. And so we could undercut people, and we could move faster, because we didn't have to rewind. This sounds obvious today, but at the time, this was betting on a future and betting on ourselves that we could figure it out, because the books hadn't been written yet about how to do this. There was no way to learn it other than to fail fast and fail often. Now then we started to get noticed, and even Apple noticed us and started putting us on stages. And this is one of my most favorite but also bittersweet stages, because this is Michael Wong from Apple, got to do a presentation about this. And of course, it's very sad because this was an Apple NAB booth, rest in peace. And then we got excited about the next wave, and we started betting on the next thing. So my brother and I and a few others started a new company called Light Iron, and we started to bet on 4K file-based technology. We became friends with the founder of Red, Jim Gennard, and we started betting everything that the future was going to be CMOS sensors, 35 or larger sensors. It was going to be file-based, but it was going to allow us to build this 4K and 5K and 6K DI infrastructure, and to be understanding how RAW works, how to capture RAW, how to build RAW. And here is this little startup, and I am happy to admit, we had no business working on these films. We had no idea what we were doing, but we were able to tap into a technological revolution that nobody else had studied for the test, and only the nerds knew the answer. And so we were able to get hired, and we skipped all this world, and we started working on films that other companies had to be around for 20 or 30 years, some of them 100 years before. And then we move in and be like, yeah, we know how to do all this stuff. This is easy. And the incumbents were still messing around with videotape and telecine, right? And so we were able to slip in there. A mentor of mine once said, the idea of a great entrepreneur is to be able to avoid when Tyrannosaurus Rex and King Kong fight. Your job is not to be T-Rex or King Kong. It's to be the little mouse that doesn't get stepped on. And if you can just navigate while they're fighting each other, you can just be fine. Because once a winner is declared, that winner's got broken bones and they're all messed up, right? And you've just been able to eat and feed and feast while they're fighting each other, right? We started betting on mobile technologies. We built some of the first iPad apps that did mobile dailies. We started our first iPad app in 2009, the same year that iPad was released. And then we started building on mobile post-production, and we said, you don't need whole facilities to do this. Today, you know it as like DITs, but back then, this was very new, that you could actually simplify all this technology into a cart and make it mobile. I worked on over 175 major motion pictures and television shows and started betting on all this technology and getting better at it and betting on myself. In fact, this is way back in 2014, 10 years ago. We did the very first HDR show ever. Transparent, Amazon was the first streamer to ever be able to distribute HDR, and Transparent was the first show to ever do it. And today you think like Dolby Vision is new, but we were doing it 10 years ago, before the specs were written, before it was a standard, certainly before it was available in an iPhone. And when we made this show, probably only 2 people, me being one of them, could actually see it in HDR. But don't ever let people tell you that something's not worth it because there isn't enough support for it, because everything starts infinitesimally small, and it's on us to be able to grow that. I don't care what analogy you want, but a tree and a mustard seed, right? These start small, and then they grow huge. If you're a late adopter, like, well, I'll get on board when it matures. I'll wait and see. Then you're not getting that drafting value, right? You're with everybody else, trying to find scraps. After a few years, we got noticed, and we ended up getting acquired by the largest camera rental company in the world, Panavision. And when they bought us, I said, let's take this technology and let's take Panavision lenses and ergonomics, red sensors and computers, and light iron color science and workflow, and we built a camera together that is an exclusive camera you can only get at Panavision. But in 2015, this was an 8K large format camera, and today that still is pretty high quality, but this was 9 years ago, and people used to say, what are you doing? 8K, large format. There are no large format lenses. We're barely at 35 lenses. There weren't, that was as far as people went. And here we are building all this, and we had a ProRes mode in it. You could shoot ProRes log in 4K from an 8K sensor in log 3G10, which is a 20-stop dynamic range curve. This was very advanced 9 years ago, and it's amazing that people said, this will never materialize. You don't need this. No one will be able to see this. No one will get the value out of it. And it's like, we'll wait and see. We'll see, right? And so we try that. And so we got to build this camera, this amalgamation of these 3 companies. And then I bet on the next big future, which was the cloud. And I got to work with Emery Wells, and I became a senior vice president at Frame.io, which was a smaller startup at the time. And we said, where's this future going to be with cloud acquisition? And so I joined that team, and we started building this cloud acquisition. And we eventually, with the help of many other manufacturers, I think there's more than a dozen today, but a few years ago when we started this movement, this is the Red Raptor XL, which you're able to actually connect directly to the internet and shoot. If you had the bandwidth, you can shoot raw files, 8K, directly to the internet into Frame.io. You probably don't have the bandwidth to do that, but someday you will. It starts as a mustard seed, but it grows. And if anybody here thinks that they're going to be pulling cards out of cameras 10 years from now and downloading them through USB, you're nuts. You're nuts. That's as crazy as someone saying saying like videotape will never go away, which they said, right? Or that film projection will never go away. You'll never get all those theaters to switch over to DLP, digital projection. What are you talking about? It's done, right? And so you got to see that trend happening and bet on the future. We eventually sold Frame.io to Adobe, and then my story kind of hit, now what? Now what? And if I look at this picture, and while this is my story, I know some of you have similar stories, but this is the point. Don't miss the point here. When you're betting on the future, I bet early on digital over analog, and I put everything in it. I bet early on files instead of tape at Plaster City. I bet early on 4K HDR before that was a thing that anyone was talking about. I bet early on large format. All of these catapulted me to the front of the line because I was drafting the trends because they were just barely fads at the time, right? And fads can become trends, and then trends become standards. And once they become standards, everybody's on board. But the goal is for you to get on board before it's a standard, or else you miss the slipstream value. Do you get it? Hello? Right? And then I moved to camera to cloud, and we started saying the future is in cloud acquisition. Yes, today you don't have the bandwidth. Yes, today there's only a few cameras that can do that. But this is a camera to cloud device. And everybody's got one. And so think of where that's going to go. That downloading is evaporated. It will evaporate. You will tell your grandchildren, we used to have to download, you know? It's going to be ridiculous. Like, are you kidding me? Just like we used to have to rewind. And so after I left Adobe, I decided to start a new business called Strada. And the reason for that was because there was something else changing in the market. And so we want to talk about now how to help you bet on the future. And this is what it's going to start with. What do you think North American video production is going to look like? Or is it going to be bigger or smaller? North American video production by 2030, bigger or smaller? Bigger. Bigger. Very good. Okay, so we got that right. It's going to be bigger. Okay, how much bigger? A lot. 2 times? More. 3 times? More. 4 times bigger. How about 5 times bigger? By 2030, the market from last year, which was $30 billion, will increase to $150 billion. This is not a guess. This is very reasonable data that you can research, you can pay for, you can learn. People are spending a lot of money trying to get this research right because they want to advise their groups to make good decisions about the future, right? And so we think about another opportunity here. This is a picture of something that I really noticed. This is really interesting. Normally, every 4, 5, 6 years, there's a few new companies that come along to do something interesting. Oh, there's always new companies starting, but a few do something really interesting. Here's what I've noticed. In the last 5 to 10 years, I'm seeing companies all over the place that are doing huge things, and they didn't exist 5 years ago, certainly not 10 years ago. Look at Aperture coming out of nowhere. DJI isn't just about drones anymore. It's got wireless video and follow focus, all these tools with their gimbals and stuff. Look at, you've got Blue Condor coming out with all this new accessorization. Rode comes out of nowhere and completely disrupts the audio recording market, making it accessible, high quality, and fast and easy. And you've got like Dizio and groups like that. They make prime lens sets. You can get 7 prime lenses that cover full frame and large format for under $10,000 with the case. It's amazing. That comes out of nowhere. 10 years ago, none of these brands really existed. Certainly 5 years ago, half of them didn't even exist. And then think about in the mobile space. It's dramatic. We've got CapCut, Splice, B-Script, Moment, and Small Rig. In the mobile space, there was no mobile space 10 years ago. Now the mobile space is on fire. And I see people walking around using iPhones as part of their kits. The one-man band is not actually lo-fi anymore. It's amazing. Teams of one were never possible. It doesn't even make sense when you think about it in English. Teams of one. It's like, how do I have, I'm it. He's it. It's amazing, right? So this is what's changing. Here's another thing that's happening. The groundbreaking space at Apple. It seems just like yesterday, Apple was saying, we're going back and building processors again, and we're going to blow your mind. That just happened. Now we're on M4, right? That's amazing. And then we've got HEVC chips built in. If you don't know, I know my specs, I do my tests, I do so much rendering and editing. In 2020, during the pandemic, a 4K ProRes file converted to H.265 with main 10 settings, 10-bit settings, was 2 frames per second. That's what it took to render this is pre-M4. This is pre-new Apple Silicon. 2 frames per second. Today, that same file on my laptop renders at 500 frames per second. It's a 250 times improvement since 2020. And I was rendering so much HEVC in 2020 because of the pandemic, I got really aware of how long it took to do that, and I had to prepare for those renders, and I also had to lift my laptop up and put something underneath it so it didn't sit on a hot surface. Apple then gives us Apple Log. Apple Log in an iPhone is an experiment. Doesn't it feel like an experiment? Because it's certainly not for anybody to practically use. But what could it yield? What can you learn? That's early adoption right there. And of course, this Apple codec is able to get 13 stops of dynamic range. This is called a Xyla chart on my YouTube channel. I go through a whole bit on the Xyla charts, and I examine the dynamic range of an iPhone, which is equivalent to a cinema camera 10 years ago. A $100,000 cinema camera had 13 stops. Film barely has 13 stops. And now the iPhone has 13 stops. Where will that go? And then the last one here is what we saw yesterday. Apple now putting ML processing, and now there's multiple layers of ML going into Final Cut Pro, and that simply means there's going to be a major expansion of ML tools right in the NLE. Imagine in a couple of years when there's 50, when there's 150 tools that are inside that going to speed things up. This is powerful. In the creator economy, this is an amazing statistic. The creator economy, an enormous group of people that actually are user-generated content, are doing something remarkable. This growth by 2027, a mere 3 years from now, is going to be 100 million strong. There will be 100 million editors on planet Earth in 3 years, because they are cutting their own content and they're putting it out there. But here's the real thing. Of 100 million people, which is an amazing amount of people, 4% of them, 4 million people, are what we consider creative professionals. Those creative professionals in their social media channels will be making content, and 4% of them, 4 million people, are going to be making 6 to 7 figures a year based on just their channels alone. That's how valuable this market is. 4 million people making 6 to 7 figures just on their channel. That is a massive opportunity, people, massive. And it's double from where it was in 2022. It was only 50 million. By 2027, it's doubled. That's how fast this is moving. That's the opportunity in this space. And there's another space here that's incredible, just YouTube alone. YouTube has done something unbelievable very recently. They cracked double digits, and now YouTube is responsible for the equivalent of half of all television viewing. So if you looked at all of television, YouTube is now 50% of all TV combined, all broadcasts combined. All those broadcasters are fighting each other for a point, and YouTube is now at 10%. Ask yourself, do you watch a lot more YouTube today than 5 years ago? Of course. The answer is absolutely. And so is everybody else. And this was a good year for broadcast because we had the Olympics. This factors that in. And YouTube is still 10%. It's incredible. You can see that value there. This thing is on fire. It's on fire. And if you're not using it and figuring it out in your space, you are missing out on that Slipstream. Creator economy, the new technology being built, and YouTube, these are all things. This is a whole new world order of exhibition. And these are just a few. This is just the tip of the iceberg of ways to distribute. When I started out, the only ways to distribute was to have a movie deal with theatrical or a broadcast deal with a telecom broadcast group. That was about it. Independent cinema was a thing for Sundance, but it wasn't a career that you could really count on. You had to get distribution, and now that's completely upside down. I know you know this because I'm not sharing you something that you have never heard of, but the truth is, I don't think you all fully are synthesizing it. So I understand you're like, okay, I recognize all these things, but do you understand that 75 years ago, when there were 4 networks, that was the only way to exhibit, if it was in the home entertainment space. And then when cable starts coming out in 1975, there's more opportunities for exhibition. But when the internet comes out, we have a hockey stick explosion, and it's still going. That's the difference. You want to be at the forefront of this movement, or else you're going to miss out. And so what does this mean for us? Well, it means we have an insatiable appetite for content, and we will go anywhere to satisfy it. We're going to go anywhere to satisfy this. And you know, Netflix is an amazing brand. And here's a question. This comes from Reed Hastings. Who do you think Netflix thinks their biggest competitor is? YouTube? Wrong. What's Netflix's biggest competitor? Sleep is close. Who else? TikTok, wrong. Disney, wrong. Netflix's biggest competitor is your free time. If you have free time, you can't watch Netflix. And so everyone, remember, we have an insatiable appetite for content. We are going to go anywhere to satisfy it. Netflix has figured this out, which is why they are not only the most successful paid streaming service, they are the most successful by an enormous margin. Nobody's even close. Second place is like half. So because they understand it's about free time. They understand that your appetite for content is so big that you'll watch it here. This is a competition for Netflix. This is competition for Netflix. This is competition for Netflix. And this is the space that they got to be competing with. But this is the space you can create for. If I give you the secret that people have an insatiable appetite for content and they are willing to go anywhere to get it, you should be making it for them. Hello? That's what you got to do. This is creating an incredible content creation engine. This engine is so powerful and it's so simple. See, if we start with more outlets, all those ways to exhibit and distribute on your own, what happens is that more creators are born. I did a speech a few years ago at NAB with LumaForge at the time. And I said, you know, there's this world now of people that believe the world is flat. They've always been around, but now they have a channel. And so you can communicate with them. You can make content for flat earthers. Go for it. There's an audience, right? If there's an audience for flat earthers, there's an audience for everything. You have no excuse to not create something for those people. So more creators have to get born because there's a channel for flat earthers. So there's got to be flat earth influencers, right? So there's more creators. If there's more creators, then the manufacturers need to make more tools to create with. That's why those products in the mobile space and those other products like Aperture and Rode, they came out of this because they're serving the creator economy, because it's an economy that's growing. And if you have manufacturers build all that stuff, then more content has to be created with these new tools, and then more outlets are born to distribute them, and round this motor goes. You get this flywheel effect. And you're seeing it happen, and some of you are in it, and you're profiting from it, both creatively and financially, and some of you are just watching it go by, and it's like being on the edge of like the Colorado River in Class 5 rapids, and you're just like, there's no way I can get into this thing, and you're seeing millions of gallons of water, and then all of a sudden, a raft is coming down, and there's people in it, and they're just paddle, 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 paddle. That's where you want to be. Yeah, it's a Class 5 river. Okay, I'm not saying this is easy, but there's an opportunity to get in it and row and participate and change it and navigate and succeed. This is so different from where we were 25 years ago. 25 years ago, Hollywood drove narrative tools and narrative workflows. We looked to Hollywood to inspire the tools and the workflows if it was narrative. We looked to sports and news to tell us how are the tools for broadcast built? What are the workflows for broadcast, right? And we looked at them for that stuff. But now, who is driving the workflows and the tools? You. You are doing it. This is why the tools don't look and act the same anymore, because the persons that are influencing the largest growing market are not broadcasters. Did you see the charts? They're not Hollywood. Have you read the headlines? It's changing. Sometimes people see something that's really bad, like Hollywood's in a bad spot right now, and they're like, well, then everything's over. Think of it more like a waterbed. When there's a dent in one area, there's a lump in the other. Right? It's not just everybody loses. There are winners in this change. There are losers too, but the losers have an opportunity to respond, and if they don't, and they place their bets in the wrong sector, they don't get any draft. And that's why we've got to be able to get this right. If you're not paying attention and you're not getting this is good news. Hopefully you're getting that. This is really good news. When the ease of content creation goes up, this is good for you. When the amount of content creation goes up, this is good for you because you're storytellers, you're editors, you're colorists, you're mixers, you're writers, you're producers, you're directors, you're cinematographers. This is good for you. Even Mr. Wonderful has changed, and he agrees with me.
There are 3 disciplines you should focus on. Number 1, engineering. Number 2, engineering. And number 3, engineering. And if you get any chance at night, get some engineering classes while you're getting your engineering degree. Because everything else is bullshit. It's just a hobby. I don't feel that way at all anymore. At all. Because I look at people that I used to hire for $25,000 a year, photographers, videographers, writers, artists. They're costing me $250,000 a year, and I can't even hire them as staff anymore. They only take contract work because they're doing 2 deals or 3 companies at the same time, pulling in $700,000 a year, and they're only 28 years old. It's a renaissance for artists. So how do you harness this? How do you monetize this or reduce the cost? I never saw this coming.
Powerful words. Powerful words. Powerful person who didn't favor the creative in his business portfolio. And now the creative drives his business portfolio, and it will drive every business's portfolio. Storytelling is the way for all businesses to communicate their mission statements, their products, their values. All of it is going to come through a play button. All of it. All of it. Text will go away, magazines, paper, PDFs, all that will go away to a play button. And the play button will be totally king. And it needs people to write, shoot, edit, record, and tell all of those stories. Many of you are already in this slipstream, but some of you are not. Some of you are not. That's okay. So I want to know, why? Well, I think there are 3 reasons some of you are not finding yourself in this slipstream. The first one is you're working in a sector that isn't benefiting from these tailwinds. An example of that today would be if you're actually in the Hollywood space doing marquee content, you'd be like, none of what Michael's saying is happening to me. That's a sector problem, not a you problem, not a skill problem. It may not be a talent problem or an experience problem. It's where you are bringing those skills. Another problem is your suite of services is too narrow to capitalize on the tailwinds. There's a lot changing in expectations. It's going to be tricky. We'll get into this one in a second. And the third one is you don't feel you're being compensated for your services. Now, these are 3 things that I think are affecting you if you're not benefiting from the tailwinds. And I'm expecting to actually hear some whining now, because this is oh, that's not fair. Okay, so here's your whine. I'm going to predict your whining, and we're going to examine it. The first whining is you're saying, well, there's a reduction in marquee content. Yes, but there is an explosion in UGC. That's a sector change, right? I know it's not easy, but it's a change. Or you might be saying clients' expectations are going up. Yeah, but the technology in education is so much more accessible. You remember this, you've seen this a million times. This actually hasn't changed at its core. Good, fast, cheap. You still have to pick any 2. But what's changed from 2000 to 2024 is what is good and fast and cheap has to be gooder and faster and cheaper. You still pick only 2. But the expectations have gone up. Yeah, okay, so expectations go up, but there's more resources, there's more training, there's more education, and the cost of getting a microphone, a camera, a lens, an editing system have gone down. They haven't stayed the same. They haven't dealt with the inflation effect. They are cheaper. It's unequivocal. It is cheaper. Now, another thing you'd whine about is your team is smaller. Yeah, but your team is smaller, but individuals should be able to do more with less. I am able to do so much more, so much faster than I could 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Part of that's my skill, part of that's the tool set that I rely on. And if I widen that tool set and I increase my skill set, I can do more with less. And if I hire 3 or 4 versions of me, we are doing 20 people's work with 5 people. That should work with you. It's possible. And then the other thing that's kind of problematic is, well, budgets aren't increasing, but you should be able to do more work in the same amount of time. If you're not able to do more work in the same amount of time, your tools are not serving you, or your willingness to learn new skills are not serving you. So let's look at a poor plan. This is a hashtag going around Hollywood that I really dislike. The hashtag going around is survive till 25. Anyone heard this before? I understand, and I am absolutely sympathetic to the reason, very understanding of the reason for this. But it's a bad motive. It's a bad approach. It's a bad posture because it is passive. It sounds like you're at a bus stop just waiting for your bus to show up. And if it doesn't come, what's your plan, right? You got to be proactive. And so this survive to 25 suggests that for some reason, none of the data supports this, by the way, but for some reason, everything is going to be fine in 2025. I have no idea where the data suggests that if you are unemployed right now, waiting for a calendar to flip over somehow makes you employed. It doesn't work that way. You've got to be proactive. And there's a whole bunch of people I really care about that are not being proactive, and they're just hoping is a strategy. Hope is not a strategy. And so that's why this is a passive approach, and you got to be proactive in your approach. Here's one of the data points that should really be important for people. Peak TV. The idea is that in analyzing the growth of how many productions were greenlit per year, this takes you back to 2002, shows you how many original series were greenlit and made each year. Look at all that growth up until 2019. Of course, the pandemic hits and it goes way down, and there's a little bit of a rebound, but the truth is, I think 2019 is peak TV because we have this little rebound situation, and now in 2023, the last full year we have to analyze, it's way down, and if you ask most people, the data isn't out fully yet, but 2024 is fewer greenlit shows than 2023. That is a decay. And so one of two things is going to happen. Either A, it's going to magically go back up in 2025, which none of the data supports, or B, it's going to continue to decay because peak TV means that was the top. 2019 was the most amount of shows without the effects of a pandemic. That was the most amount of shows. And that was when the streaming services were their strongest because they were taking the biggest bets and they were trying to fight each other. Now you see it all kind of averaging out. Many of the streamers won't exist in 5 years, right? So this is a really important thing to understand, is that if you're in the marquee content space, there are simply fewer shows being greenlit per year. There is a possibility there will never be more than 532 original series ever made in 1 year. That may be the facts, and we'll see. And so if you're betting on 532 shows to run your business or run your life, you are taking a major risk, and the data doesn't suggest that it's a good one. Another thing to look at here is just a summary of everything. What I just gave you is a couple of years of highlight research, so you don't have to do all that, although you saw the QR codes allow you to dig a little deeper should you want to do that. But if you take all this in, what does it actually mean? It means this is a picture of where I would say you should bet on the future. You should bet on all this information. But then you have to figure out how to bet on you. Because if you can understand the information, you're like, okay, well, how do you take the next step? What is the next step? What is the thing that you have to do to be able to take it? And it starts with being honest. If you're honest with yourself, remember these three things? If you're working in a sector that isn't benefiting from the tailwinds, how do you be honest with yourself? You need to change sectors. That's a tough decision. I understand that that is not made over lunch. But if you are not benefiting from the tailwinds, then I want you to spend the next couple days listening to everything that happens at this event and think about how you may need to explore a different sector. If your suite of services is too narrow to capitalize on the tailwinds we're discussing, then you need to widen your service offering. And you got to provide more services, and you got to have a wider net for that. And then if you don't feel you're being compensated for your services, well, you got two choices. You can change sectors or provide more services, and that's going to solve that problem. These are your choices to really start being honest with yourself. And so if we dig deeper into these, what does that kind of look like? Well, how would I actually provide more services? These are what I call point and compound solutions. Point solutions worked forever. And when I point this out, it'll make sense. There's nothing wrong inherently with point solutions. A point solution is a product that is known for doing one thing really well. All products do a couple of things. Your car it drives, but it also does a few other things. You can store things in the trunk, you can listen to the radio, right? It has other things. But a car isn't known for trunks and for radios, right? It's a car. Okay, that's a point solution. Well, when I think of our industry and I think of the people here, well, a point solution for editorial is Premiere and Avid. They are known for editing, and that's primarily what those tools do. Now, Adobe and Avid have other products that are also point solutions, like Pro Tools or Sibelius, right? Or After Effects and Illustrator. These are also point solutions. So inherently, there's nothing wrong with a point solution, but when I think about how to provide more services, I want compound solutions. Compound solutions are not just doing one thing, they are actually doing more things. While you can mix in Avid or Premiere, nobody reasonably tries, right? And while you can color correct in Avid and Premiere, nobody reasonably tries, right? But Final Cut has, I mean, the audio side of Final Cut is unbelievable. It is really unmatched in terms of an NLE. The entire Logic engine lives in Final Cut. If you don't know, it's incredible what you can do. What they didn't say yesterday when they showed the Logic demo is that that filter is going to end up in Final Cut, unless Apple changes something about their core audio policies, which I doubt. So you're going to get that reverb control in Final Cut, because if it's core in Logic, it's core in Final Cut. If you look in Final Cut and you go to audio, you see Logic in it. It's amazing. And so you'll be able to do that. But you can also color correct, and the color correction with the new mask, the new magic masking, is going to really accelerate color correction. There's the automation of color correction, but now there's a level of precision that I only could usually get inside of Resolve. Resolve is an amazing compound tool, but there's one challenge with Resolve. I think the learning curve is too steep. People who are experts in Fairlight are never experts in the Resolve, the DaVinci part, right? If you're using Resolve for editing, you're probably not an exceptional colorist or an exceptional sound mixer. But in Final Cut, it's different, because Apple found a way to make it fit inside of a compound solution where the learning curve is less steep. And you're able to get 80 or 90% out of something without having to need Fairlight, without having to need Resolve. That is different from a point solution. Do you follow? Now, you need products that are like that, and Final Cut is one of the best, well-rounded, but you also need to be doing compound services. If you are just editing, it's not good enough anymore. You've got to add the color correction experiences, you got to add Logic, you got to add motion. You got to compound those together, because if you can add those, if I am trying to hire, you're trying to show off what you can do, if you are the same price as someone else and someone else adds in sound mixing, you're going to win the job. And then you're saying, well, Michael, you're just giving away free money. Not necessarily. Let me show you why. How am I going to make sure people can find me? Well, when I joined this industry that we're in, everyone told me, Michael, it's all who you know. You've heard this, right? It's all who you know. And you come to events like this, it's all who you know. But it's completely upside down now. Everything now is who knows you. And you can capitalize and win based on who knows you. And that's got to become part of your plan. It's funny that storytellers are so good at telling other people's stories that hire them, they're the worst at telling their own. You got to prioritize telling your own story. Your new business card is Instagram. That, as far as today is concerned, is the way for people to know you. And if you are not using Instagram to find a way to connect with your audience and your people, and I'm not saying be an influencer on Instagram, I'm saying tell people on Instagram what you're doing and that you're doing it. You know this. If you are editing and you take a picture, and if you got to blur out the screen, do it. Be like, I'm editing today. People will like it. And they'll be like, that person's always working, right? But most of you post one time every 6 months, and people are like, they're not working. Even if you are. So you got to make a priority here to be able to do that so that you can get people to know you. And where do I think this bigger opportunity is coming? How are we going to be able to do more with less? How are we going to be able to make our teams more understanding of compound tools and have more compound resources? It's got to be in this new AI thing. It's got to come from somewhere. We have to get something new. We can't just be expected to not sleep and just learn more. We've got to get a leg up. And that's what I call utility AI. Most of the AI that you hear about, read about, talk about, maybe even use, is generative. There's all these discussions. We're going to have to go to courts and all that stuff. I don't care about that. That can all happen and play out, and we'll see how it goes. But the AI that I'm betting on is utilitarian. It's AI that does the work that I don't want to do. Gen AI is great for disposable content. I was on a panel with this knucklehead once, and this knucklehead was just like, he says, do you realize that there are Instagram posts that are made completely by AI bots, and they feature AI people? And I was like, so what? And he's like, how can you say that that's okay? I'm like, I don't even understand what the frustration is. He's like, well, it's taking a job from someone else. And I was like, well, how do you know that? If a bot didn't make it, there's no data that says it would have been made at all in the first place. How do we know that? We don't know that. And this is content that is disposable. I'm not going to go and die on a hill for some ad that you see for 2 seconds and swipe through. What is that worth? That's not where I'm going to burn my calories. I want to make something that matters. And that's why utility serves in real life creative professionals who are not telling stories that are disposable. There's nothing wrong with disposable material that's out there. It's fine. Remember the toilet picture? It's fine. You're not going to watch, Interstellar on the can. I know that. We know that. It's different. But can we make a better Interstellar, cost a little less, and be a little bit more easier to create with these tools? Sign me up. Let's do it, right? And that's where utility AI will serve us. Creatives who use AI got surveyed, and these were the results, and these are remarkable results. Look at this. Saving money was the least valuable reason to use AI. Think about that. Because your instinct tells you, oh, it's got to be about saving money. And everybody that's using it is like, yeah, I guess, maybe a little. Not that much. Where they're really making use of it is speed, which is going to help you do more with less. It's going to help those teams. It's going to help get that slipstream we talked about. And the other thing in here is filling skills gaps. When I talked about the compound products, and you're like, yeah, but I'm not really good with color. I'm colorblind. Or I'm not really good with motion graphics. That's not my thing. Well, then how do we examine how to fill skills gaps? AI has this incredible thing to fill skills gaps, and I'm going to show you a trick. Skills gap principle. So the skills gap principle says on the horizontal axis, if something is close to you, something that you really care about, or something that's far away, okay? So these are, if you're an editor, editing is close to you, and cinematography is far away. If you're a cinematographer, it's the opposite. So there are things that are close to you in your vocation and things that are far away. Then on the vertical axis, we place the value of a task. Not all tasks have the same value. They're all a little different. And when you factor that in with your vocation, we get a little grid here. So think about this. If something is close to you and you put a high value on that task, you do it. That's what you do. It's pretty obvious. But if something is a high value, but it's not close to you, what do? You outsource it, right? Because it's really important, but it's like, that's not what I do. You find someone else to do it. If something is not something you do, it's far out, and it has a low value, you ignore it. Why do it at all? Why burn any calories doing something that doesn't matter and it's kind of outside your wheelhouse? But if something is close to you and you put a low value on it, you automate it. And that is the key place for all of this opportunity. You can also take this exact same thing and put in skills gap principle and replace it with budget gap principle. If you are working with limited budgets, if you are paid to do it and it's high, you do it. If you are not paid to do it and it's high, you outsource it. If you are not paid to do it and it's low, just don't do it at all. And if you are paid to do it and it's low, automate it. And that bottom left quadrant is the magic quadrant of AI. When you are looking at AI tools and researching them, these are the tools you want to find, and that's the spot you want to do it. Because if you're an editor, you get joy out of editing. You don't want something to edit for you because it makes you feel good, right? And it's your special thing. And so we're not trying to do that. But if you're an editor and you could deliver sound mixing, then if I could add the sound mixing through AI, then we have an opportunity to do that. Here's how I would put this into practice. This is just a couple of tools. Rimini is an AI tool that cleans up all my photos, so I don't have to deal with Photoshop cleanups. which is this task that I'm not really, I kind of want it, but I don't want to spend the time to like clean up photos. I just run them through Rimini. Evoto has completely eliminated Photoshop for me when it comes to retouching. If you've ever sat there and retouched anything in Photoshop, Evoto completely has made Photoshop extinct in my world. I can paint a face in Evoto. I have to say at least 25 times faster, and I get better results than I do in Photoshop. And I only need to have about a 3 out of 10 in the skills scale. And if you're doing faces in Photoshop, you need to be a 7 or 8 out of 10 to be retouching faces. You don't mess around with that or you screw it up. But in Evoto, we're talking level 2 or 3 skill. And I'm pumping through Evoto and cleaning up photos, and I don't have to waste much time on it, so I automate it. Topaz, probably a lot of Topaz users, excellent tool for denoising. eMastered. eMastered, you do a rough mix in Final Cut, you get that thing sounding pretty good, you just upload that to eMastered, and it will do a full sound mix in about 2 or 3 minutes and send it back to you as a 24-bit WAV file. And it's unbelievable. If you are a sound mixer, you don't use Evoto, because remember, if you're a sound mixer and you're passionate about it, you do it, right? But if you're an editor and you're like, I got to do a rough mix because that's part of your job, but if I want to do a mastering of that, eMastered. Notion is how I do my documents. I put my scripts in there, and I use AI to help me clean up scripts, automate things, and work on the wording. And think about this in a different area of space. We've got Descript, we've got CapCut, Splice, Canva, and Figma. Something really interesting about this that I consider a warning to Apple. All these products on the bottom are new products, right? These are new brands. They're awesome brands making awesome products, but they're new. And you know what a big difference is? The way in which we learn has changed. You know that first time you opened up After Effects and you like, is it even running? Because you don't even know it's on because like nothing happens, right? Okay, that's one extreme, okay? I don't even know how any of us learned After Effects because that's how it all starts, right? Great program, but rocky open, right? And then it's a tough first act. And then but if you open up Descript or Splice or Canva or Figma, you're onboarded through the app. Have you noticed that? They take you through it. You get a drip campaign of emails. You get tutorials. You get links to resources. They show them in the app. This is a new way of learning and bringing people on. It's completely bizarre if you think about how we learned even Final Cut. You just have to figure it out. It's a little more intuitive, but this is a warning to Apple. The new way we learn is that the app teaches us as we go. And that's something that I think is important, that products that are going, don't assume that everybody knows your product and they'll figure it out. Lead them through it. You'll learn new stuff. Even pros. You're here because there's something about Final Cut you don't know and someone else in this room knows. That's why you're here. It's too much to know. Let the app help with that. Let the community help with that. So when I think of this, I say the best creatives will create. The best creatives will create. If you have knowledge, then if you put your stories out there, people will become curious, right? What I'm saying is you do your job, but part of your job is to share your knowledge. If you share your knowledge, people will be curious. If you share your knowledge with passion, passionate people always get trust. People start to trust you. And if you're passionate and you have a willingness to teach, then you'll get followers. And this is a combination that you have all the ingredients to do because you are the people that create it, but you are so busy creating for other people, you're not realizing that possibly, just possibly, this creator economy that's going to have 4 million people making 6 or 7 figures a year on their channels, you have no reason to not be one of those people. There's no reason. I know it sounds weird to many of you, like, are you saying for me to become a YouTuber? Yeah. That's it. It doesn't mean you're only a YouTuber, and it doesn't mean that's a stigma or it's bad. There are so many people that are teaching about what their vocation is online. You click on it and watch it. If you are absolutely an expert and you have that knowledge, then exploit that and make people curious of the information you have and the way that you teach it. Because with 100 million creators in the world, again, that number is insane, some of them are going to work like you and think like you and make what you make. I met Michael the other day. He does all this amazing disabled awareness campaigns. He's changing governments with what he does. That's what he does. But he uses the same tool as you. But his version, his story, his connection is completely different. And there are people in his circle that will follow what he does. And they can learn from that. Nonfiction, politically motivated, helping, right? Like all that is a certain thing. And then there's people like Steve and Mark. They're always teaching the teacher. They're like the professors that are one semester ahead of the students, right? And they're teaching it, and they're right on the bleeding edge, and then they share it right down. And we need to figure that out so that we can take that insight and teach others and learn how to do it ourselves. You know, 150 years ago, what I realized is we are just miles away from where the gold rush began. And everybody came to California. So many people came here, just a few miles from where we are, to seek this fortune. But for those of you that know the story, who are the people that actually made the money? Picks and shovels. Not the landowners, not the gold pulled out of the ground, certainly not the people that did all the mining. The people that made the money made the tools. And if you can turn your vocation and your resource into a way to teach people, you are the picks and shovels of our industry. You can influence how the tools are made, you can influence how they're used, and then you can teach other people to do it, and you can build on that. And you can get in that slipstream. And it's amazing to see that possible. I decided to have to figure out where to place my bets. Because I'm not just up here talking, I have to do the same thing. And if you remember, my brother and I had really great jobs. I was part of a sale of Frame.io to Adobe. My brother had a great job at Netflix. My partner and cousin, Austin, was a partner of mine at Frame.io, and we left, and we had to place big bets. And, you know, looking back, I miss my team. I miss being at Adobe in a lot of ways. I miss the things that we were doing in the Camera Cloud story. And we had got that thing going, and it's still going, and I'm so proud of the team that's keeping that story going and the things that Frame.io are building and Adobe are building. But I also saw an opportunity, and I'm just a sucker for placing a new bet on the future and a bet on myself. And I just couldn't help it. And so when I think about something that's always bothered me about all workflows, it's that all of us spend too much time logging and searching for our stuff. And it's not just editors, it's producers, it's writers, it's directors, it's agents, it's lawyers. Everybody is looking for something. You might be looking for it in an active way today for a project you're on, but you also have thousands and tens of thousands of clips over the years that you know in your head. I think I did an interview with so-and-so, or we did a recording of this, or there's a shot of this. You can't find it. I know you can't find it. It's gone. I mean, most of the time when a project's completed and finished, if a year or two later, someone's like, we have to reopen that project again, you're like, oh boy, right? You know what that's like. You're like, you double click it and you're just like, oh boy, you know? That's what it's like. Now think about going back 2, 3, 4, 5 years. That media has value, but if you cannot find it, it has no value. It might as well not exist if you can't find stuff. And we believe there is a utilitarian way to fix that. Strada is an industry's first search and collaboration platform, and we aim to eliminate the time it takes to find anything. Google effectively eliminated the time it takes to find something on the internet. They're so proud of it. They literally say 30,000 results in 0.03 seconds. That's how proud they are of how fast they're able to find things for you. And I want to do the same thing with this Strada technology. And so what we're going to do today is try a workflow that's completely untested. And when I say untested, this is what we call trapeze without a net. I have no idea if this is going to work. We have not tested this. We are going to try something really interesting for the very first time, because I know I'm in a room that I can fail and not be laughed out of the room. What you saw as you came in is Shannon Stutenroth shooting on a Komodo X. Shannon's shooting clips, and she's using a Teradek Cube 655 to upload those clips directly into Frame.io. Those files are going through a Sclera, which is a mobile modem. It's just a portable modem that she was wearing in a backpack, and it uses cell phone towers. And whenever she rolls a clip, her backpack is just, as long as she can make a phone call, she's shooting those clips to the cloud. That media is stored in Frame.io, which is what Austin and I built at Frame.io. We built the camera to cloud story. So we have camera to Cube. Cube goes through Sclera to Frame.io into the cloud. And then Strada connects to Frame.io. Strada can read Frame.io, and Strada has the ability to analyze faces, locations, objects, emotions, text, and even your badges. And it can see all that stuff. And then what we're going to try is we're going to move that media to LucidLink, which is a exceptionally good cloud editing service. And then we're going to move that media into Final Cut Pro. And we're going to use all the metadata to automatically populate our keyword collections. And that's what we're going to try to do. And there have been portions of this we've been experimenting and working, and some of you are beta testers of Strada, which is a very young, new product, but we are trying to start that out. So we are going to try this right now, and we are going to start with advanced automation. So I am going to simply go into Strada. I am running this in Chrome, and I am going to log in. And I have a project here that once I log in, we are going to go to the Final Cut Pro Summit. And this is all the media that Shannon has been shooting today. So there's all this media. And so I'm going to start by just searching for some objects, because what happens is I can select a bunch of clips. I can go to this word analyze. And when I say analyze, I can turn on faces and items and text and all these things, and it can start to analyze the results. And if I go here and I search for something like a phone, it will find when people are on a phone. And if I go to my labels tab, we can see that phone is discovered. But what's amazing is right now it's really blurry. It doesn't notice it. Look, when I hit play, the phone comes in focus, and you see the timeline. It shows when the phone is visible, right? And if I keep playing, we see no phone, right? It understands that. I go to this clip, and we're going to see the same thing, and we'll see our phone right here. So I could search for phone. I could search for something like an emotion, like happy. What do happy people look like? Right? We're going to be able to find a happy person, right? And so if I look at the word happy and I see, we're going to get a smiling face right there of Robin. There he is. He looks very happy, right? We can search for, this is a little odd, but something really abstract. I think I can search for milk, but we go here and it's going to read and understand these boxes and figure out where the milk is, because if I go to the text here, it understands that milk is actually written right there, right? So it can read that, right? I can go to people. Let's go to Gregory. We'll go to Gregory, and it'll find Greg right there. And it understands that he's right there. And so it will automatically find all the faces. And so we know Greg is in this edit. You see his name? You see where the dots are? If I hit play, I can tell you in 3, 2, 1, we're going to see him somewhere. No, we passed him. We saw him in there. There he is, right there. It recognized his profile right there. It understands that, right? If we go here, we could see Greg might show up in this one as well. There he is, right? So it understands that. If I were to search by, who else we got here? We got Ian. Ian's right here. And so we can find Ian, but we can see him in other shots. So we find all the shots that he's visible. So somewhere in here, we're going to see him. We could go to, let's see here, Oliver. Oliver's in here, and we can find him that quickly, right? So we've got all these quick solutions. And one more, Nathan. We find the faces, we find them once, and once we find them once, you label the name, and you automatically will get their, it will populate them every time it sees them going forward. If I searched for text, I could search for Cupertino. And it'll find wherever it sees that word. And so we know that it's going to be in a lot of places, but we can start to find that. You know, my name is right there. So if I typed in Cioni, it'll find all the clips where my name is actually on the screen or spoken, because it could be something spoken as well. So if I go to interviews, here are the interviews. Now check this out. Let's listen to this interview.
Selamat pagi, nama saya Robin. Saya lagi di Cupertino.
That's a language I don't understand, but Strada is able to understand Indonesian, and when I click on English, it will automatically translate it back to English. So I can search and understand that. So we can see the transcriptions here, and everything that is spoken is transcribed automatically, all in the cloud. Nothing's downloaded in this process, so we can see these transcriptions. And here we have a German speaker here, Oliver, and here we can see it spoken in German, and we can also switch directly to English so we can understand what is being spoken. There we go.
Aus Köln, Deutschland, und ich bin hier, weil es das einzige Event ist, was ich nur rund um Final Cut drehe.
There you go. So very powerful way to utilize that. All of this, by the way, can be exported as SRTs so that I can make bulk action SRTs, and that quickly, here are all the transcriptions that I just opened up here. There are all my transcriptions of what was spoken, so we can import those into other tools. So an incredibly powerful way to work. But there's one more thing that we want to do. We want to take all this media and we want to be able to export it, and we can export it as a Final Cut XML. All of this metadata, I mean, if you look at this metadata, what is so powerful about this is all of this relatively powerful metadata is able to translate into Final Cut. And to do that, I'm going to go to my LucidLink directory. So if I go to LucidLink and I go into the Final Cut Summit, I'll open up this project here. And now I'm reading this media off of LucidLink. So it's going to link this media all from LucidLink here. And now I have a Strada analysis. And everything here is built as a keyword collection, which means range-based subclips. So if I go to the word happy, or what do we got here? I haven't seen this yet, so we have to look at a hat. It's going to find all the shots with a hat, right? If I say I'm going to look for, I don't know what Holt Camp is. Oh, it's your last name. There it goes. So it can understand that's a link there. If I look at the Juniper Hotel, it's going to find all the things. It even understands the wall of the building, right? And it's subclipped it for us, right? Because these are already range-based comments. If I wanted to make a new project here and just put these in, I just made a Juniper AI-assisted Juniper cut list, right? There's my B-roll list, right? If I wanted to go, we got Ian, we got people we can search, right? We got, there's our laughing. So this is just going to find a bunch. Let's see if this is work. Is this a laughing montage? There we got some laughing, some laughing. We got Brad laughing. If we look at microphone, we're going to see every time there's a microphone somewhere in here. If we go to, let's see here, we can see my brother's in here. So it's going to find all the shots of my brother. There he is. Yeah, this looks like a seminar according to the AI right here. So we can see there's a seminar information there. So this is a really, really new way of being able to discover and find and also shorten the time it takes to discover these things and figure out where they are. There's some beards in here as well. So this is the very beginning of being able to figure out how to utilize this technology. It's really powerful. But there's one more thing I want to show you that is so exciting about this, and that is the powerful way to sync in the cloud. Here is a project here, and if you look at this, there's a whole bunch of audio. If I zoom in here, you'll see there's A camera clips, and then there are B camera clips. So there were 2 cameras rolling, and there's a whole bunch of audio. There's a total of 175 assets here. If I select all these assets, this is an entire day's worth of shooting, and I right-click, and I say, I want you to sync this by time code. This is the world's first automatic cloud multicam syncing tool. There's nobody that can do this. And we're going to assemble multicam takes in the cloud, and there they are. That's how long it took to sync an entire day's worth of footage. And now when you look at this, you see there is an A camera, B camera, and the audio, and it's renamed the take, the scene and take, based on the audio file. And if I want to search this and I go for the word countryside, I can go right to the transcription where that is taken, and I can see the countryside is spoken. It's so fast. I can go to a different take, and I could go to the word countryside, and she's going to say, no, I lived upstate in the countryside.
No, I lived upstate, the countryside.
So there we go. So we got multicam playing back in the cloud, and I sunk an entire day's worth of dailies. I don't know, was that about 10 or 15 seconds to be able to sync all those results. And that's the power of being able to leverage the cloud. And of course, in all of this material, I could search by the character Shayna, and it'll find all the takes with her. I could also say, where does Shayna appear with Max? And it'll find the takes where Max and Shayna appear together. So we can combine those elements together. This is a whole new way of working, where we think about the future of AI as a utility. We absolutely invite you to join the Strada movement, and this is free for you to try and start analyzing your media. You simply connect the cloud, you analyze your media, and you're able to start searching for that. We are looking for people that are early adopters, because I'm betting big on utilitarian AI, and that's what compelled me to start a new business. And I'm betting big that people need to find their stuff. And this is part of the way I'm applying the information we discussed this morning to each of you, right? And this is how I'm applying it to me, right? Like this is not me just sharing information. It's like, I want to live this too. So we invite you to join that. And before I finish up, I do have a message for Apple. Yesterday was really exciting. It felt really good, didn't it? Yeah. It felt really good. And I think we're all excited about that. Yeah, it was really good. But this room should have 3,000 people in it. And someone's got to figure out what's wrong. Because this product is so advanced that it changes lives. That it's literally changed lives. And it builds community like this. But we know that this is a fraction of the people that are affected by this. And the people that can be affected by this. It is unfair to the entire community, because when I talk to other people that have the same discipline that we all probably share, we don't have to make excuses for Final Cut. People that don't use Final Cut are constantly making excuses for their editing system. Yeah. And we don't have that. We have a system we're proud of. We have a system that is stable, that is evolving, that is cool, and it has all these things. Yet, we are a small group of people. There's something is missing, because the days of the past that we think of don't have to be the past. And the days of yesterday shouldn't be something that only 150 people can experience. And so I don't want to be just defending. I know a lot of you like me are like telling people, you got to get on Final Cut. Do yourself a favor and get over your 10-year grudge and let's get on with the show, right? Like, that's what we want to do. And and those of us that have used it and know it well know that it's faster than all the other NLEs put together, that it's more versatile. And it's so powerful. We know all that stuff. And we know with the product line and the communication and all the things that are happening with all the other parts of the ecosystem. You know, my message to Apple is that someone somewhere along the way decided that things like NAB and Cinegear and IBC, we don't need to do that. Everybody shows up to our booth, has an iPhone, has a MacBook Pro. Why are we spending the money on this? This isn't about money. This is about community. Creative people, we're wired differently. You know, half of us are like squirrel, right? That's half of us. And the other half are like scared of our shadow, right? And we need affirmation. We need feedback. Do you remember 6 years ago when people started to write open letters to Apple being like, are you abandoning us? And Apple's had to respond. Understand, Apple, is the reason we had to write that is because we don't know what you're thinking, because you don't share. And other companies are more transparent in that. And we're not asking for you to tell us what you're developing before it's not under embargo. That's not what we're saying. We just want to feel you that you're there. And this community has become the community that helps us feel that it's there. But it's not our job. It's their job. And so it's a real opportunity that I hope we can encourage, and I hope Apple's encouraged by the response and the excitement and the changes of all the things that are going to happen. And I hope that events like this are 10 times bigger, where that we have to be in the Steve Jobs Theater because they can't fit anywhere else, right? Because that's where we belong. So that's what I want to see happen. So I can't do this without a team that came with me, and I'm really thankful for the team that's helped me put this together and being able to do a live demonstration without any rehearsal, where you are actually the footage. All that was in the cloud. Like, there was no hard drive delivered to me. Nobody, like, I didn't go over here and the laptop was switched out. That's a picture. Because you realize, because it's the cloud, I could be on the moon and that would work, right? You understand that. Shooting, analyzing, transcribing, translating, searching in Final Cut, in Strada. Like, that's a new way of workflow. It's new, and new things are early, new things are small, but that's kind of what we wanted to show, and I hope that reached you all today. I want to thank you all again for a wonderful start. I hope this is great. I'm so proud of everybody here. Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much.